now I'm really honored and happy to introduce our today's speakers. Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, famous teacher of meditation, as well as author of a few bestsellers about meditation. One of them is Joy of Living, translated to 20 languages. And today we also have Dr. Richard Davidson. He is a professor of psychology and psychiatry at University of Wisconsin Medicine and founder of the Center for Healthy Minds, also devoted practitioner. And Dr. Cortland Dahl, he is a chief contemplative officer at the Center of Healthy Minds, as well as Tergar senior instructor and CEO of Tergar International. And just before I hand over to Court, I wanted to mention that we created a link that also will be shared in the chat now. This is a link to submit to the mail list of the Center of Healthy Minds, so you can get updates and news from this great center. And now I hand over to Court.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dinara, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining. It's been heartening to see all the names and cities that you are all joining from around the world. And of course, a great honor to also be here with you, Richie, and you, Rinpoche. We've been looking forward to this for a very long time, so it's great to finally have this opportunity. So really, what's going to happen here is we are going to have a public online dialogue that you all can take part in and join in that we have been having for a few years. We had the idea about 3 years ago to start working on a book together. And we spent a week in the edge of the desert in the southwest of the United States a couple of years ago. And then last summer, we spent another period of time on the outskirts of the Kathmandu Valley in Nepal, continuing our dialogue and discussion. And this was all to give shape to a new book that we've been working on together. And we actually decided then when we were in Kathmandu that we would have these dialogues as a way to bring this not only in our own internal dialogue, but because we really wanted to engage those of you all over the world to hear your thoughts, your ideas, your questions. And so we've very much been looking forward to this. And the focus of these sessions, starting today and for the subsequent 5 weeks, is really on a couple simple ideas. The first is really to bring a very ancient Buddhist idea of a klesha, which is kind of like a toxic mental emotional state. And in the traditional terms, we often hear about attachment and aversion. And we've been thinking about what are the 21st century versions of these kleshas, these what are oftentimes toxic mental and emotional states. And of course, these are things that we all live with and grapple with in our own daily lives, either ourselves or the people we care about. So things like distractibility, attention-related disorders, addiction, emotional imbalance. And then, of course, these days, we have a tremendous amount of social division. So these are the 21st century kleshas. These are the big challenges that in our inner lives we are dealing with individually and as a species. So that was one topic that we've been discussing. And we've also been discussing what modern science and ancient wisdom have to say about this. What could we actually bring into this, these challenges we all face that might be hopefully a new and helpful perspective? And what we focused on is this very simple but profound principle that we don't have to fix and improve ourselves to experience something differently. In fact, a lot of the inner peace, the sense of simply feeling at home in the world, a little less stressed out, or even more expansive things like awakening, actually can be found within the very challenges we experience. So it's this very radical idea that we don't need to get rid of the parts of ourselves that we don't like. We don't need to go to war with our own minds and emotions, but rather we can learn to explore our inner experience and through that to discover things that we might not ordinarily see. So this is going to be the topic of really this whole series. We're going to get a bit of an overview today, and then we're going to dive in and deal with each of these 21st century modern kleshas one by one in the following sessions. So we're going to do this as a dialogue. Richie and Rinpoche and I have been having an ongoing discussion and dialogue, which I mentioned, and we're just going to be doing that together. And as Dinara shared, we'll be able to hear from all of you. So we would love to hear your own questions, your own thoughts. So there was a moment that Richie and Rinpoche and I shared in Dharamsala a few years ago that we thought would be a great way to kick this off. So Richie, I wonder if you could just share a little bit about our experience there in Dharamsala and why that perhaps is important as a way to frame our discussion.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Court and Rinpoche and Tergar. And let me just say that it is an honor to be here with all of you, many friends from all over the world, and for you all to be part of this dialogue that we've been having. The event that Court is referring to is what was a summit that His Holiness the Dalai Lama requested Dan Goleman, Tara Goleman, and I to convene. And it was a group of young, compassionate leaders. These were people 35 years and under who were engaged in compassionate social action in the world. And we selected them through a whole process. They were a very diverse group from many different continents. Throughout the world. And they were they came to Dharamsala with us to spend 2 days with His Holiness, so His Holiness can both learn about their story and also perhaps impart some wisdom about compassionate leadership. And we were blessed to have Mingyur Rinpoche and Sokni Rinpoche with us. Not only as guests, but they really served an important role in helping to support us during this time. One of the young compassionate leaders was a person by the name of Ronan Harrington. Ronan is Irish, and he was one of the founders of the Extinction Rebellion. The Extinction Rebellion, for those who don't know, is a kind of radical climate action group that started in Ireland. And they engaged in nonviolent but disruptive demonstrations. And at the end of our first day in Dharamsala, Ronan challenged His Holiness in a way that I think was quite shocking to most of us, because very few people speak to His Holiness in a kind of almost aggressive way. And Ronan was basically saying to His Holiness, Your Holiness, you've given us lots of platitudes, words of kindness and the importance of common humanity, but these are words. What we need is action. That was Ronan's message at the end of the first day. And he expressed this in a quite agitated way. And we then went back after that day. And actually, that was a time when Mingyur Rinpoche and Sokni Rinpoche helped us in convening us in the hotel we were staying in and giving us practices to help hold this space in a way that we'll all learn about as part of this 6-week dialogue. And the next day, Ronan came into the meeting with His Holiness, and His Holiness was absolutely the same in expressing his wish that we recognize this common humanity, and this needs to be at the center of whatever action we take. And the embodiment of His Holiness of the message was so powerful. And Ronan was really, I think the best way to describe it is his aggressive demeanor just melted. And this was a pivotal turning point for him. And his problems, and I should say that he was suffering from a lot of health-related problems that were brought about by the stress of his social action. And this has now become the centerpiece of his life. And the purpose of his life is to help people who are engaged in social action to care for themselves. And to embody these qualities of being as a way to embody the kind of change we all are seeking to make. And it was really not about fixing his problems. It was not about turning away from them, but rather recognizing them as an opportunity, as a springboard for a different way of being. And that's what we'll share today. So I wonder if we can now turn it over to Rinpoche, who can talk to us about what keeps us locked in these unhealthy patterns of our mind. So Rinpoche, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Richie, and all of you. And yeah, so in our meditative tradition, we discuss about like 3 layers of self. So we have unhealthy sense of self. Normally it's only 10%. Then we have healthy sense of self, which is 90%. Then we have luminous self, or self beyond self, which is 100%. So these things are there with us, but what happens normally where we are locked in is with unhealthy sense of self, which is only 10%. So sometimes what we call, if we have 10 qualities within us, 1 negative, 9 positive, normally what we see is only 1 negative one. Not only that, we exaggerate and we deny 9 good qualities within ourselves. So of course, over this series of talk, we will elaborate about these 3 sense of selves and to bring these into experience. But maybe today, I will share a little bit about that only 10%. Of course, this 10% is not like scientific research exactly 10%, not like that. It's just like the way of saying. So that unhealthy sense of self normally begin by what we call monkey mind. So we all have this mind that pala 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 yada yada yada, and it is restless. And also it does the opposite of what we want. So maybe I will give you one example. If you are saying that don't think about pizza, what will happen? You will think about pizza. And the pizza come to in your mind all over the place. So that is what we call aversion. And there's a second thing. For example, in the night when you want to go to sleep, and if you look for sleep, I need to sleep, what happened? Sleep will disappear, isn't it? That's what we call craving. So these 2 things together, it manifests in our life, then it will create stress and anxiety, panic attacks, which is I experienced when I was young, the panic attacks, depression, relationship problem with your workplace, in your social circle, loneliness, so many things will create with these 2 things. For example, aversion could be manifested with a relationship. Then you only see the negative aspect of, oh, he or she not understand me, not there for me, a lot of this. Or in your everyday life. For example, we suddenly feel bored, and then we try to always avoid this boredom, these clashes, depression, anxiety by doing maybe just scrolling our smartphone, try to forget that. Oh, I need to talk to with the friends, family, and you go with the talk to your friends, then suddenly you feel bored. You come in, I want to be alone. But then after a few seconds later, oh, I don't like be alone. Turn on the television. So it's always avoiding entire our life. And that suppressing, avoiding doesn't help. Then in the another side, we always look chasing after something, craving. So here in this meditation tradition, what we call the most important thing is we have this wonderful nature within ourselves, like luminous self. And for that, no need to do anything, just being. And of course, on the process that sometimes just being is not so easy, then there's another method, transforming. And sometimes we cannot transform, then there's removal. So we have so many rich techniques how to connect with our true nature, ourself. So we will discuss this step by step.
So Rinpoche, I wonder, building on what you just shared, I think we could turn it over to Richie. And I wonder if you could just highlight, Richie, what's kind of new and unique about this particular perspective? How is it different? And perhaps why is it so important to perhaps explore this, given all the challenges we're facing these days?
Yeah, so thank you for that. When I was a student, we were taught and much of Western psychology and medicine is focused in this way to identify problems and to develop strategies to fix those problems. That's what modern psychology and psychiatry is really based on. And it turns out that while it certainly is helpful in certain situations, it also is not working well. And we know that there is relapse that is quite common in these kinds of disorders. We also know, on the flip side, that even in the most difficult circumstances, when people are subjected to really extraordinary adversity, most people don't succumb to real pathology. Certainly, some do, but most people don't. And this is one of the clues that we have innate strengths, that there are innate qualities of the human mind that protect us. This is the preciousness of human life, something that is part of the Buddhist teachings that really has been, over the last 15 years, very much confirmed by modern science. We have innate qualities of awareness and compassion, and we'll talk about those in more detail later. But it turns out that focusing on this, what we might think of as a strength-based approach, as opposed to an approach which has as its goal to fix problems, is a radical alternative to what the traditional Western model is. And this is something that certainly is offered to us by the Buddhist perspective. And there is more and more science, as we'll learn over the next 6 weeks, that speaks to this and really confirms that we do have these innate capacities, and these are capacities that require nurturing in order to be strengthened. And the practices that Rinpoche will introduce us to are practices that are really designed to strengthen qualities that are already there. They're not designed to create something new in our mind or to fix something in our mind. They're really practices that help us recognize what is already there and to simply strengthen them.
It's so pretty easy to understand this intellectually, and it is so hard to actually believe this. When I look back in my own experience as a meditator, I think like Ronan, I think like many of us, I myself started meditating and got interested in these things because I was struggling. I had a lot of anxiety. In fact, I had a very crippling phobia of public speaking. So doing something like this back when I started meditating 30 years ago, it would have been unthinkable to me at the time that I would have willingly chosen to do something like this. And at the time, if I look back on that, I viewed meditation as something that I hoped would allow me to get rid of the parts of myself I didn't like. If I'm honest, what I hoped is that I wouldn't have anxiety. I wouldn't have this fear. I wouldn't have this rumination in my mind. That was really why I started to meditate in large part. There was curiosity and other things, but at least in part, it was motivated by that wish that I think many of us have, where we simply want to suffer less. We don't want to be stressed out. We don't want to experience these things. And what Richie and Rinpoche are both speaking to is that this approach that we're going to be exploring here is a completely different way of viewing experience. I never would have believed at the time that there was incredible richness and wisdom within the anxiety that I was experiencing. That actually, if I could learn to shift my perspective a bit, I didn't need to get rid of the anxiety to feel at peace, to feel at home in the world. In fact, that there's a lot of care, there's a lot of insight that you can unlock even within those very experiences. Nonetheless, that's what we're going to explore. And that's a lot of not only what these ancient teachings tell us from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but also, as Richie just mentioned, a lot of the most cutting edge science that is happening these days. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this general perspective, the shift, the inner paradigm shift, you could say, that allows us to start to explore and see these things in ourselves. But sometimes just having a shift in perspective isn't enough. Sometimes we might understand it intellectually, but in the moment, we need tools. We need practical things, practical tools we can use in our lives to deal with the strong emotions, the overpowering thoughts, the difficult circumstances that we all face in our lives. So we're going to talk about 3 methods specifically. Again, these are very ancient tools in the Tibetan tradition that are just starting to be researched, or at least some of them are just starting to be researched with the tools of modern science, that even within that wider perspective of not trying to get rid of the parts of ourselves we don't like, just give us simple tools to work with. So in simple terms, we refer to these as removing, transforming, or transcending the difficult toxic emotions, or what we call kleshas. So you could think about this in relationship to distraction, which we'll discuss next week, or to addiction or emotional imbalance. The approach of removing is really the mindset of doing something so we get some space from the difficult emotion. So we're able to step aside experientially, even with that view that we can open up to it. But in the moment, we might realize we need to step back and have some space from it. The second approach is transforming, and we'll hear more about this in a few minutes, but even while it might be present, for example, while distraction or difficult thoughts might be present, we can transform the way we're experiencing them. And then the third approach, which is transcending, is to see beyond them. Even while they're present, we can see some deeper, more expansive element of our experience that has been there all along, but oftentimes we simply become blind to it, or we never learned to see it in the first place. So just to boil it down to the key point here, the first and most essential thing here is this shift in perspective, that we don't need to fix ourselves. This is not about self-development or self-improvement. This is about tapping into the parts of ourselves that never were broken and that don't need to be fixed. It's a reorienting ourselves to our fundamental innate purity and wholeness. So that's the first part. The second is the practical step of having these three tools in our toolbox, sometimes needing to remove a difficult experience, sometimes transforming it, and then the third step of transcending it. So as we were discussing, and again, we've had now weeks of this deep discussion of these topics and how we can use them to deal with the challenges in our lives. Rinpoche, you told a story about learning these practices and these ideas from your father when you were just a little boy and you were struggling with panic attacks. So I wonder if you could share a little bit of your own experience.
Yeah, Cortland. Thank you. Definitely. So I suffer panic attacks when I was young. So actually panic was developed with me maybe 7, 8 years old. But when I was 9, it's become so severe that I cannot really kind of like be with the people. If the new people, the stranger comes in my hometown, I cannot go out of my door, and a lot of pain, like tight around my neck, cannot breathe. Lot of thought in emotion. The monkey mind become crazy. So then I discussed with my mom. So she recommend to learn meditation from my father. So for me, what I was doing with my panic attacks is two things. Maybe running away from my panic attacks or fighting. I really want to get rid of my panic attacks. I remember that sometime I ran into the forest, deep, kind of like dark forest, and I ran there. And for a few minutes, it's quite okay. Then panic come there also. I ran into the cave, panic followed me there. I hiked the mountain on the top. When I on the top, panic followed me there. So then, no matter what I do, it doesn't help. So then when I begin to learn meditation from my father, my first question is how I can get rid of my panic attacks. And my father said, don't. Then I thought, then I will not learn meditation from you. And he said, trust me, no need to get rid of panic attacks. So then I said, why? So then he told me about the innate, this nature. So we have so many names, sometimes what we call basic innate goodness, the original purity, your true nature. So he gave me example like sky and the cloud. So for example, sometime we have very strong storms, tornado, hurricane, pollution in the sky, but the sky is always cannot be polluted by pollution or storms. These storms cannot change the nature of sky, no matter what happens. Sky is always beyond, but at the same time, we have these severe storms can occur in the sky. So my father said, your panic attacks is like storm in the sky, and our true nature is like sky itself. So he asked me to do one exercise to watch the storm. So I was born in the Himalayan mountain. We have sometimes crazy storm comes, thunderstorm. When the thunder comes, entire mountain will shake, So I was waiting for the storm. So when I wait for storm didn't come. And I wait. Finally, after a few weeks later, one huge storm came. I was quite happy. And then entire sky is full of dark cloud and lightning. And then there's a lot of red flash everywhere, like burning fire, and the entire mountain is shaking. Then it's all gone. So I know that all these storms, these clouds cannot change the sky. So I was quite happy, and I report back to my father. He said, yeah, that's true. So now he said, let's discover this inner sky with us. So then he said, he gave me teach me the step-by-step techniques how to recognize this inner sky. So normally the inner sky has 3 union qualities: awareness, love and compassion, and the wisdom. So these 3 things are inseparable. Fundamental quality of our mind has awareness, love and compassion, wisdom, 24 hours. First time when he told me this, I cannot believe. I thought it's impossible. I have these panic attacks. How come I have this wonderful nature with me? But then slowly, I learned this from him. So this wonderful nature, we don't need to look for this wonderful nature because it's already there. And you don't need to get rid of any bad things because this inner sky is beyond cloud, beyond clashes, beyond panic. So no need to do anything. The important thing is, first we need to recognize, then we need to know how to be with it. So this is the really traditional, the teachings about how to find the real safe place, the real home that within ourselves.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. It's such a beautiful image, this idea of the inner sky. Richie, to turn it back to you, I know you've had some really interesting turning points in your own life, in your own experience that have shifted you out of the problem, solving problems, fixing everything, focusing on the negative to a different perspective. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about your take on this and how we get stuck in this, oftentimes this endless quest to fix ourselves and fix the world.
Yeah, thank you for that. When I began my career, I began with a simple question, which was, why is it that some people are more vulnerable to life's challenges, and why are others more resilient? And I had the aspiration for my science to be helpful for to people from the very early stages. And I thought that the best way to do this was to focus on the problems because that's where people were suffering. And so I dedicated the early part of my career to focus on the brain networks that were associated with anxiety and depression and stress, and with the thought that if we can figure out what's different about these brain networks, we can fix them and make the depression and anxiety and stress go away. And then when I first met His Holiness the Dalai Lama challenged me, and he was really curious why I spent so much time focusing on these negative qualities, trying to fix them. And he said, why not use the same tools of modern science to focus on compassion and love and wisdom? And it was a wake-up call for me. I really had not thought it was possible. And um, the science, I think most people would agree, has shown that we made some progress in characterizing anxiety and depression, and that we can apply the same tools to the study of these positive qualities of the mind. But then what became even more apparent was there was something that took me a while to appreciate in His Holiness's comment to me. Really took me many years to appreciate, and it really wasn't until I met Mingyur Rinpoche and really started practicing in Mingyur Rinpoche's tradition that I had the experiential glimpse that wow, that we actually have these qualities within us, and that the practices are designed to help us become more familiar with the true nature of our own mind. And then the science was beginning to show the same thing, that when we study, and we'll talk about this later in this series, but when we study infants, for example, we can see the beginnings of compassion, even in very young infants. And this is our natural disposition. It's not something that we are imposing But this is our true nature. And when we engage in practices to nurture these qualities, we're not creating these qualities out of nowhere, but rather we're seeing the inner sky and simply strengthening our capacity to recognize that these qualities are there, and so that they become more accessible, and more spontaneously available as we are navigating in our daily life. And so this really became a critical turning point. And it's still the case, I think, that Western psychology and psychiatry and medicine is still very much focused on the negative. And this approach, however, is actually proving to be not just a radical and different approach, but as we will share over the course of the next few weeks, the science is actually beginning to show that these strategies work, that they lead to a kind of enduring change that may be even more enduring than the model that is focused on fixing what may be wrong. And so it's an exciting time in this work, and one I think that gives us a real sense of hope about the future.
To go back to this metaphor that Rinpoche that you introduced of the sky and the clouds, a very common classical metaphor, but nonetheless, it's so helpful because if you look at your life, I think for most of us, I'll certainly speak for myself here, so much of our lives is about trying to control the weather. We're so fixated on the weather patterns of our experience, whether it's what's happening in the world around us, what's happening in our relationships, what's happening in our jobs, or what's going on internally, all of the inner reactions, the thoughts, the emotions. And a lot of the things we do in our lives are basically trying to control that, trying to get it to some level of calmness or equilibrium or whatever it is we think we're looking for. But the blind spot is we're totally out of touch with the sky. And that's again, the invitation with this particular approach. It's that you actually don't need to control the weather. In fact, that's a losing proposition. We've all tried that. In fact, we've all tried that our entire lives. And we all know it just does not work. At best, we can get it together for a little bit. But because it's all based on causes and conditions, it's all based on habits of mind, it's going to change. So at best, we can maybe get it somewhat more manageable, but it's fundamentally not within our control. This approach is just to leave the weather patterns of our experience as they are and to explore the sky, to explore more fundamental qualities of our own inner experience, again, that we're usually not so aware of, not so in touch with. But as both Richie and Rinpoche have been talking about, through the lens of science and through the lens of these ancient teachings, it's not a matter of creating some quality we don't have. It's more a matter of bringing something into focus. It's almost like it's been on the periphery of our vision and we just can't see it clearly. And we're just learning to orient to it, to bring it into focus so we can experience it directly. So we have all these esoteric terms like it's your true nature, the essence of the mind. We can talk about all of these sometimes abstract sounding words, but what it's all pointing to are qualities that are always available to us. And that's maybe what we can think about. What does this actually mean to say that this is our true nature, or it's the true nature of mind? My anxiety as a kid, when I experienced that was changing. I wasn't always anxious. And even when I was anxious, the experience of anxiety was very different from one moment to the next. But if I had known how to look at the time, there was a knowing quality, an awareness that was there, like a thread running through all of those experiences. So that awareness is more fundamental in the sense that it is always there. We can always bring that into focus, regardless of what we're experiencing. Whereas other things that maybe are part of our lives and part of our experience aren't so fundamental because they're changing, because they're based on causes and conditions. They're based on habits that themselves are conditioned. So here again, we're just learning to tune in to these very subtle qualities of our experience, which we can call our true nature, because they're always there for us. Awareness is one of those. love and compassion. It's just like the natural warmth of that awareness. And there's an insight, a clear seeing that, again, we can always tap into. This is not so helpful as a belief system. And the whole point is not to adopt a new belief system. It's rather to learn to experience this. And Richie, you just spoke to this. How do we actually bring that into focus? How do we attune to this? So Rinpoche, of course, you're loved around the world as being able to guide others to an experience of this. I wonder if you could just guide us through a little experience so maybe we could get a taste for what we're talking about here.
Yes, of course. So actually, as both of you mentioned, this wonderful quality with us 24 hours, and it is like candle lamp. So the lamp has three aspects of quality, like illuminating, light, one, and it is warm, it has heat, two, and it is yellow color, three. And these three things inseparable with the flame, right? Same thing, our mind has this luminous quality called awareness. Then there's a warm love and compassion. Then there's wisdom. So all these are there with us. But the problem, there's one problem normally. So the problem is, it is beyond concept. So intellectual mind cannot really grab it, cannot really pinpoint. So when the intellectual mind look at our own mind, then what we see is only thought, emotion, perception, memory, blah, 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 yada, yada, that's all. But there's one good news is we can experience these qualities, this awareness, this luminosity, we can experience. So maybe let's try to experience it together. So normally, when I teach this, there are two steps. The first one is, I just want to let you practice that just our normal way, just relaxing. And this is not even meditation. So because of this luminous mind is beyond concept, so we need to have two steps, otherwise we cannot experience. So therefore the first one is just preparation. So I want all of you rest your mind just like after your exercise. Maybe you do physical exercise, half hour, and then you're tired. Right? You know how to do that? Or after the work, Friday afternoon, 5, 6 p.m., whatever your time you finish your work, when you leave your office, like that, right? Or after cooking and you eat, tastes good, wash dishes, or after the shower, or after the meditation. Maybe some of you practice meditation, I meditate. And after finish meditation, for me, I experienced that after meditation is really good. Or after the deep breathing, maybe we can try to do deep breathing together. So breathing from your nose and from your mouth. Relax. There is a gap, right? Rest, space in between the breath. And you don't need to meditate. So let's try this together. So you can keep your body loosely straight, relax. And first feel your body. Just feel your body through temperature, or feel your body through gravity, light and heavy, whatever you want. Just feel your body for a few seconds. And now just relax your mind, and you don't need to meditate, because you're not meditating You don't need to get rid of thought. All the bala bala yada yada, let them come, let them go. Don't care about those. Now we will do deep breathing together. So breathe from your nose. Rest. Now natural breathing, and continue, just rest your mind and body together. And no need to even feel your body. Just let your mind as it is. Feel body okay, not feel body okay, thought is okay, no thought is okay, everything is okay. Now again, slowly deep breathing in again. Natural breathing again. Okay, now if you close your eyes, you can open your eyes. How was it? So how many of you feel a little bit calm? Raise your hand in front of the screen. Hopefully you raise hand. Okay, so now we have second step. So normally before the second step, I share one big secret. The big secret is actually there's no second step. That being with our fundamental quality of the mind is already done. So what we call open awareness or supportless meditation. So when you be as it is, though you cannot really grab it, there's sense of being, you're not totally lost. Awareness is there. And at the same time, there's some kind of well-being. There's some kind of like feeling of love or some kind of like sweetness, okayness. So there's a loving kindness. Though there's no object, there's no particular focus. And also illuminating, right? You can still see, hear, thought comes and goes. So there's the wisdom. So this three quality is already present that time, though we may not really grasp, cannot find it, but you experience it. So hopefully this will be the kind of like seed experience of the innate well-being, innate quality that of course we can more discuss this in the future.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. That was a wonderful little taste of the experience of being. Rinpoche, I'm curious what science has to say about this. It probably wasn't long ago that the scientific view would have felt like light years apart from what Rinpoche just guided us through, but things are changing pretty fast. I wonder if you could share a little bit about what's happening in the field of research.
Yeah, so this is really a vibrant area of work now that is exploring qualities of like awareness and like love and compassion, and asking the question as to what extent are these qualities really innate? Or are they part of who we are as human beings? Are they there from the start, so to speak? And the answer seems to be that they are. Of course, there's a lot more work that needs to be done, and there are some aspects of this that are more well studied than others. But with regard to awareness and the kind of practice that Rinpoche introduced us to, what is key to this practice when we rest in awareness is not getting lost. And this quality of not getting lost is what scientists would call meta-awareness. It's the quality of knowing that we are aware, knowing that we're listening to sound, or knowing that we are experiencing the breath, knowing that we're seeing. And this quality of knowing is what we would call meta-awareness. And all of us have meta-awareness, whether we've practiced formal meditation or not. It's part of who we are as human beings. And it turns out that this quality can be nurtured and strengthened. And so we might get lost a lot at the beginning. And as our practice evolves, and as we become more and more familiar with the nature of our mind, we can recognize this quality and tap into it more easily and more spontaneously. And this is really helping us to understand that qualities like meta-awareness are indeed part of what it means to be human. And we're beginning to identify circuits in the brain that are important for meta-awareness. And similarly, Rinpoche noted that when we do this practice, there's kind of a coloring of okayedness, of love, of caring. And this also is part of networks in the brain that are there from the start. There's a molecule in the brain that is there when we're born called oxytocin. And oxytocin is important for mother-infant bonding. Oxytocin is complicated. Some people once called it the love hormone, but it really isn't that. It is important for caring, but in order to extend this quality of caring beyond our immediate circle requires practice, and requires that we extend the circle to include more and more of humanity, something that the Dalai Lama talks about as common humanity, and that all human beings are fundamentally the same in our nature. And when we appreciate that and we cultivate that sensibility, we can take what is this innate seed and nurture it and extend it to include more and more. And so these are really qualities that are there from the start. And one of the ways that we think about this as scientists now is kind of like language. We know that language is an innate quality. Every human being has the capacity for language, but we also know that this capacity requires nurturing to be fully expressed. And there are some case studies of children that have been raised in the wild that don't have a normal linguistic community in which they're raised, and those kids don't develop normal language. And it's similarly true with qualities like awareness and like love and compassion, that they require nurturing, but these seeds are there from the start. And that's what we are learning now from modern science.
So the way to start getting in touch with what Richie is talking about and what Rinpoche just introduced us to is being. And being, unfortunately, in the modern world is something in short supply. We have perfected the art of doing, and we, for the most part, live in a wasteland when it comes to being. In fact, we have managed to eliminate and erase many of the cultural practices and rituals which would have given us the space for being in our daily routine. So for many of us, it's almost like an unfamiliar language. I know when I first started to meditate, I was a very hyperactive 19-year-old, a college student at the time. As I said, I had a lot of anxiety. And I remember my early experiences meditating. I had so much restless energy. I felt bored. I felt my mind was racing out of control. And we hear this all the time from people who are starting to meditate. People oftentimes think that they're doing it wrong, that they perhaps aren't well suited to meditation, not realizing that this is the most normal thing in the world. Getting distracted, the mind racing with thoughts, feeling that bored, restless energy, wanting just simply to get up and do something else. One way to think about this is that all of that energy is the residue of compulsive and obsessive doing that we basically are all being programmed to do by all of the endless to-do lists, being surrounded by technology from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep at night. And again, it's just the unfamiliarity with being. Being, however, is the gateway to everything that we're talking about here. It is, you might think of it as one of the most vital skills, one of the most vital practices that we have in the modern world, simply because it has become so unfamiliar to us. And it's important for one important reason. And that is because when we normally come into any practice, whether it's meditation or anything else, we bring into that all of our assumptions, all of our unconscious programming. And usually what that means is that it's this inner paradigm of fixing. And all of that is based on the assumption that fundamentally we're broken. The world is broken. The people around us are broken. Our relationships are broken. Everything is in need of being fixed. And so we start meditating or whatever we do in our lives, and it's colored by that often unconscious assumption. Being begins to short circuit that assumption. It opens the space to look at things differently, to look at things, whether it's at your own mind and emotions or the world outside, not through the lens of what's wrong and what needs to be fixed or improved, but what is already there that doesn't need to be fixed. So being is like that inner language that allows us to get in touch with these qualities. It is the gateway that allows us to shift from trying to fix and control the weather to see and experience and rest in the inner sky that Rinpoche is introducing us to. So we have all, in fact, this was a really beautiful part of our discussion when we were in Kathmandu last summer. We all started trading stories and talking about those first few moments when we experienced this, that shift from trying to fix ourselves to really making peace and opening up to this quality of simply being and the simplicity of the moment and everything that then made possible for us. So, Richie, to turn it back to you, I wonder again if you could just share a little bit about how that went for you, what you've experienced, and what this brings up for you.
Yeah, so thank you, Cord, and I'll share a little bit about my sort of personal relationship to those issues, and also what the science says about them. So one of the things that I've begun to do, I've been doing this now for a few years, and this goes back to what Mingyur Rinpoche invited us to experience in this practice of open awareness, to also feel the quality of love and compassion and the kind of fundamental okayedness when we shift to this mode of being. And this is something that I do regularly after I meditate every morning. These are typically on weekdays when my life is typically quite busy and I'm really in a mode of doing. I spend a couple of minutes after I meditate and I simply go through my calendar for the day and reflect on each person I'm meeting, hold them in my mind and my heart, and simply allow myself to be and experience this quality of appreciation for who they are and for how I might be able to be most helpful in my meetings with them. And it's simply all this comes up when I just allow myself to rest and to bring these people into my mind and my heart. It's not forcing a sense of appreciation. It's just feeling this natural quality, a kind of connection that naturally emerges. And just simply recognizing that. And I also am a passionate believer in the importance of physical exercise, and I ride my bicycle. And before I ride my bicycle, I spend a few moments reflecting on how riding is something that can help me become healthier, but not just for myself, but for all the others that I interact with, and simply shifting into that experience of riding in that way, so that I'm riding without getting lost in it, but really being aware as I'm riding is another thing that I do on a regular basis. And one of the things that is often confusing to people in this area is this concept of flow. This concept was developed by a very famous psychologist by the name of Mahai Csikszentmihalyi. It's a complicated spelling. Csikszentmihalyi worked at the University of Chicago, and then he moved to Claremont College. And he was the one who first wrote about flow. And flow is that state that we get into when we are completely immersed in whatever activity we're doing. And Csikszentmihalyi often studied interesting practices. For example, he studied rock climbers who are super focused on what they're doing. And in those cases, if there's a lapse of attention, it could be lethal. But the complicated issue is whether flow is occurring with this quality of meta-awareness, or whether these people are engaged in the activity and completely lost in it. And the analogy that we've used is going to the movie theater, where you might sit in the movie and be so engrossed in the movie that you lose awareness that you're in a theater. You may even lose awareness that you're watching a movie. You're so engrossed in the plot. But you can be equally attentive to the movie and still in the background recognize that you're sitting in a theater and watching a movie. And still have the same quality of complete attentiveness, and that would be more akin to flow with meta-awareness. And it turns out that this quality of meta-awareness or knowing that we are seeing, knowing that we're hearing, that Rinpoche often talks about when he teaches these simple practices of awareness, that this is really a key element in this shift from doing to being.
So Rinpoche, what does this bring up for you? Going back to the tradition, your own life, your own training, or the tradition you grew up with, where do we find the roots of this quality of being?
So when I was young, for me, the biggest problem is the panic of panic. So I don't like my panic. When I try to get rid of panic becomes bigger. So then I begin to learn how to be our mind as it is. So the fundamental quality of mind is illuminating. Though you cannot grab it, but you can experience it. Then there's a panic comes and goes. So after a certain level, a glimpse, of course not too long, a glimpse of okayness, glimpse of being with what we call self-luminosity, the flame illuminating itself. Even you don't need to have any other source, external source to illuminate. So our mind has this self-luminosity that even there's no object, even there's no need to know anything, but illuminating itself. So a glimpse of that really helps for me. So then this traditional, we have a lot of examples about this being, like if you suddenly go to the national park, so you feel this well-being, peace, but you cannot really describe it. You can experience it. So that's the experience of the being with the self-luminous mind. Or if you look at the modern art, it breaks the normal pattern of your regular mind. There's a gap. You can experience it, you cannot put into word. Another example is what we call the joy of youth. When you are a child, you feel happy, you experience it, you cannot put into word. Especially when we are young, we play a lot, lying down in the natural grass, look at the sky, we experience that, the self-luminous mind. We can experience it, we cannot put into word. So maybe you all have that experience time to time. Especially if you are too much worried, if you do the deep breathing, you will feel that well-being. So, and all this teaching comes from Buddha. So when the Buddha was young, his father brought him into the farm where there's festival. Big festival comes in the farm in the ancient time. Then everybody is involving with the celebration. And then Buddha kind of like bought and then went to under rose apple tree, just sit there, just relax, be himself. And suddenly Buddha felt that there's some kind of like joy, can experience it, cannot put into word. But then there's awareness, things around, the birds are flying, the bees are moving around, yet their state of mind beyond concept. Yet you can still have thought and emotion. So he has this wonderful experience. Then he forget it. And then he left the kingdom, look for the answer for the life. What is the meaning of life? What is all these phenomena come from? So he learned a lot of different religious kind of like studies. He learned a lot. Then he thought, learning, intellectual learning, not enough. I need to practice. So he went to next to the river, Naranjan, and 6 years of very strong practice. Then still he didn't get the answer. And finally, he let go of this intellectual thing, let go of rigid meditation, just be as it is. Then he remembered the experience of when he was childhood, the experience of being under rose apple, that just being. And that really helped him to the beginning of the enlightenment. And after that, he came to Bodh Gaya, sat under Bodhi tree, and fully enlightened. Then he said, I discovered this profound, luminous, beyond concept, peaceful, like nectar. And it is beyond concept, so even I teach, no one will understand. So I will stay silent under forest for some time. But of course, then later he began to teach these teachings. So this, the wonderful tradition of the being is from the Buddha, of course, and then in our tradition from the Buddha, and then we all practice. So then for me, in the end, I discovered this, the presence of awareness become more clear, and the aversion of the panic attacks in the end disappear.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. There's a few things you mentioned there that I want to pull out and highlight because they're so important and helpful. The first is the simplest thing. You mentioned this word, going back to the story of the Buddha when he was a small child, remember. He simply remembered what it was like to be. And oftentimes we make our lives and our meditation practice so complicated. We think it's about creating some new and better altered state of consciousness or some new and better emotional state. We think we need to just be some new, different person than who we are now. And it's interesting that the big turning point in his life was remembering. It was remembering an experience and remembering this quality of being that he had experienced as a young child, and that then became the gateway for him, as we're talking about here. It's the shift to from trying to control the weather to seeing the inner sky that you introduced earlier. So some of the key points here, again, just to pull on some of the threads that you introduced, Rinpoche. This is really just a matter of recognizing and growing familiar with something that is already here. Those words, actually, recognition and familiarization, are words that you hear all over the tradition, and they're very, very important. It's not about changing, fixing, altering, or improving. It's about recognizing something. It's about attuning to something. And then once you've recognized it, then it's just growing familiar with it. So Rinpoche often teaches that the word for meditation in the Tibetan tradition actually means to grow familiar with something. It means to get to know something. And that's essentially what the whole path is all about. In some respects, it's very simple. It's not easy necessarily, but it's simple in the sense that we're just learning to recognize this inner space of awareness, these qualities of love and compassion and wisdom that are like the warmth and the radiance. And then we're just returning to that. We're learning to grow familiar with that. We're learning to stay with that in our day-to-day lives. And actually, there are countless examples and moments in our daily life where this is happening, where we're dropping into that for a few moments, but they're usually so fleeting that we don't notice them. If you pay attention on a moment-to-moment basis, you'll find that, especially between activities, there's just little moments of being, moments where one thing is ended and the new thing has not yet begun, and there's just a little bit of space. Normally, we fill that space very quickly, but it's there. It's just a little moment of being, and then we move on to whatever's next. If you start noticing that, you can get familiar with that quality of being, like Rinpoche introduced us to earlier, between the breaths or between your thoughts, just a little bit of space. And then the doing can happen within that space of being. You can grow familiar with the being so that even you can be active. You can move, you can talk, you can do other things. But because you've grown familiar with that inner space, with the inner sky, the doing can start to happen without feeling like you're constantly on this roller coaster. You can feel that sense of ease and openness and spaciousness within the doing of life. So it creates more space for creativity. It creates more space to be engaged with the challenges of the world, like we saw with Ronan. It doesn't take us away from those challenges. It gives us the inner resources so we can engage the problems, the difficulties of the world, but without feeling totally overwhelmed by them. So what we've covered here is really the groundwork for everything we're going to talk about in the rest of this session and in the coming sessions. And it's really this perspective of not viewing ourselves through the lens of problems that need to be fixed, but seeing the innate qualities that we all possess, and specifically how being opens up the space where we can experience that, where it's more than a nice idea or a nice belief. Within that space, we then can engage these challenges, distraction, emotional imbalance, addiction, social division, and these three methods we've talked about. But it's all based in this perspective. So why don't we turn our attention now to the three methods that we introduced briefly earlier, and we'll go into these step by step here. But maybe Richie, you could just give us a little bit of an overview, and then Rinpoche is going to walk us through each of the three methods of removing, transforming, and transcending one by one.
Yeah, so thank you, Court. So we have labeled these for the sake of convenience: remove, transform, and transcend. And these are methods that are given to us by many different Buddhist practices, and they also have parallels, at least in certain cases, in modern Western science. And one of the big unanswered questions, although there's a lot of intuition from the Buddhist practice insights, one of the big unanswered questions is when to use which strategy, which tactic, at which time, what is most beneficial. The first method, remove, often is recommended in situations where, we may have a lot of arousal, there may be a lot of rumination, and we really need to step out of it in some way. And so there's a whole tradition in psychology of removal, where we can pay attention to our breathing, to remove ourselves, for example, from distracting thoughts. We might pay attention to sound. Rinpoche often invites us in sound meditation, which is often very accessible. And so those are situations where this strategy of removal can be particularly helpful. Transform, and we can take the example of rumination throughout each of these. So with transform, if we're having a lot of ruminative thoughts, we may seek to transform the thoughts into less disturbing thoughts. And so there's a whole branch of psychology, cognitive therapy, which basically seeks to change the thoughts from disturbing thoughts to thoughts that are more neutral. This is, you can think of as transforming. There's also work with emotion regulation, which is really transforming the emotions from disturbing emotions to emotions that may be more neutral or pleasant emotions. And then transcend is this strategy that really is, I think, uniquely provided to us by the Buddhist tradition. There's a lot less scientific research on this, but it is, in the case of rumination, recognizing that we may be, for example, worrying about the future because it comes from a deep sense of love and care for others. And we don't have to change anything. We simply have to recognize that. We have to recognize what's at the root of it. And then it's, as it's said in the Buddhist tradition, self-liberating. Once that recognition, that experiential recognition occurs, the disturbing nature of that just evaporates. And of course, this is a simple idea, but as Court said, not easy. Because it requires really training our mind. But this is a really extraordinarily complete system for human transformation that has interesting and important parallels in modern science, and as we'll show, really can be applied to each of these four modern kleshas that Court described. And so we'll now turn it over to Rinpoche, and Rinpoche is going to take more time now to really guide us through each of these strategies and give us a real taste and understanding of these methods.
Thank you. Thank you, Richie. So, as I mentioned before, we have this wonderful quality, just like flame. It has three unique qualities: the light, warm, and yellow color is inseparable, but different aspect. So similarly, our natural quality has awareness, love and compassion, wisdom, and these three things are inseparable, but it's a different aspect. The problem is these three unity quality, the fundamental quality of our mind is beyond concept. So it's not easy to grab it, not easy to find it, though we can experience. So therefore, there's a different technique, almost like skill, to how to step by step to recognize these innate qualities. Like traditional example, what we call, if you don't know the sun, look for sunlight. And through sunlight, you can see the sun. So what we call the display of innate quality. So the display of innate quality is, can you see my hand? How many of you can see my hand? Raise your hand. Or how many of you can hear my voice? Raise your hand. I hope you're raising in front of screen. So that is awareness. So remember, the lamp is illuminating itself, but at the same time illuminate others. Like things around can be seen by, helped by the lamp. So because our mind is illuminated by itself, then we can see, we can hear, we can feel, we can think, thought, emotion, perception, everything is illuminating others because mind illuminates itself. Though you cannot really describe that, but you can see through seeing, hearing, there is within us, this hearer, knower, and that illuminating itself. And love and compassion. So how many of you want to be happy, don't want to suffer? I think, hope everybody. That is the display of innate love and compassion. We all look for happiness, don't want to suffer 24 hours. And third, how many of you have curiosity, discernment? This is that, this is a table, this is a car, this is a pen. So that discernment, that curiosity is the display of wisdom. And we all have these three things. So now how to connect the innate quality through the display, then we have these three practices again. So removal, transformation, and transcend. So maybe now I focus more about the removal. So removal is meaning like when you begin to meditate, though we cannot recognize the self-luminosity, but we can recognize illuminating our mind, illuminating on the breathing, because we know that breathing, we can experience breath, right? So we will recognize that awareness or luminous mind through breathing in, breathing out. Then thought comes, bala bala bala, yada yada comes. You remove your mind from this busy mind. Be with the breathing, let go of the past, let go of the future, be with the breathing again. It's short time. Again, bala bala, yada yada comes. Panic comes, depression comes, sadness comes, loneliness comes. Remember the breath again. Bring mind back to the breath. Remove from this past, future glaciers. So there's the removal. And also removal is important in action. For example, if there's so much situation, chaotic situation around you, if you can remove from there, change. Remove from that. That's why we do a lot of retreats at the beginning. So we go to environment where they're calm, peaceful, and not so much the object of clashes, noisy, and be with a good situation. And you're removing from that chaotic. You're removing from that causing condition. Or you're removing from action like unethical behave. You're following the non-violence, not harming to others. Remove your harmful actions to others and go direction to the non-violence. So all these are what we call removal practice. So we need this, special at the beginning is very important. It will not come as spontaneously. So maybe one of you may be more things to say about this.
Yeah, Richie, I'm curious if you want to share, do we know anything about the brain networks involved, or is there any other related research that sheds some light on what Rinpoche is talking about?
Yeah, there are. So when we engage in this kind of removal process, so for example, if our mind is filled with some disturbing thoughts and we bring our mind to our breathing, and know that we're breathing, it requires a network that we call the central executive network. This is the network that can direct our attention. And the network in our brain that is firing away in response to disturbing thoughts, at least in part, involves what we call the salience network, which is the network that is detecting things that are important to us. It's very much our emotional network. And so what we do in the case of removal is we direct our mind to something more neutral, to our breathing or to sound. And this involves the central executive network. And when we do research on this, particularly in meditators that are just in the early stages of their practice, what we see is that the connectivity between these networks can measurably change. And so the connections between the central executive network, for example, and the salience network become stronger. And this is a representation, we think, of the capacity that we have to direct our attention, in this case, to our breathing away from our disturbing thoughts.
So with this first method, I think the key thing that you're both highlighting is that you might be identifying something that's a challenging part of your experience. For example, you're meditating on your breath and you've got this rushing torrent of thoughts. In this particular approach, when you're using this method, the outcome is that the thoughts are not happening anymore. You're back to your breath. And so it is a matter of removing or separating the thing that might feel problematic. We can talk about how you can still do that within this wider perspective of not trying to fix yourself, which gets into some subtlety here. But as a method, it's a little bit different. When you get to the second one, which is to transform, Rinpoche, I wonder if you could, again, just walk us through what's the difference and how would you actually do that experientially?
Yeah, for the transformation, for example, the removal one is you bring back your attention from that getting lost or that thought or that monkey mind or that clashes or emotion. So you're back to the breath, back to the sound, back to the sensation. So whatever meditation object, or maybe physically, like you develop new habit, 30-day plan, and away of drinking or smoking, like habit, like even the addiction, like you remove from there. So, but when we come to the transformation, and for the transformation, no need to remove. What we call everything's okay. Being okay with not okay. So, for the simple example is, for the removal, you come back to the breath again, right? So then the obstacle is the monkey mind, bala bala bala, yada yada yada. Then maybe a thought, maybe emotion. For me, panic attacks. So now when we learn the transformation style is, now we are using that obstacle, the monkey mind, the object of the distraction, as support for meditation, as object of meditation. So when we watch the breathing, breath becomes support for meditation. Now we can watch bala 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 yada yada. So pizza comes, we can watch pizza. Let pizza come, let pizza go. Past comes, we can watch the past. Future comes, we can watch the future. Panic attacks comes, we can watch panic attacks. But of course, at the beginning, not so easy. So we have few different kind of techniques. Watch try something different, and step back, take a break. So I think you will learn this later. But eventually, what we call poison become medicine, obstacle become opportunity, problem become solution. So for me, in the end, although it took me 5 years, in the end, panic become my friend. Panic attacks become my friend, my teacher. So problem becomes solution. I can cultivate awareness through the breathing. Why not with the panic attacks? It's same. Breath never stays, comes and goes, comes and goes. Panic attacks, the monkey mind also come and go. Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So I can experience awareness through thought and emotion. And as well as love and compassion. So we don't have much time, but for example, when I have panic attacks, when I have anger and hatred, I understand those who ever having that anger and hatred, just like me. Then we have this practice, taking and sending practice. I take all beings, hatred, anger into my own anger, so breathing in, and I breathing out, wish that may all beings are free from anger and hatred. So now my anger and hatred becomes love and compassion automatically. No need to get rid of them. So transforming. So like these little practice, step-by-step practice, is what we call the transforming. So poison become medicine.
So in the first one, we're actually getting a little space from whatever the difficult experience is. It could be our thoughts, it could be panic, it could be sadness or depression or grief, anything, or anger. This next one, it's not so much we're transforming the thing itself. It sounds like we're transforming our relationship to it. So we're not relating to it as a problem anymore. It becomes, as you said, a support. And what happens with the third when it comes to transcending the difficult experience, the klesha, whatever we might call it? How does that differ?
So the third one is the real technique is knowing as they are. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the luminous self or the self beyond self is 100%, right? We have 100% of that. But the problem is we are not recognized. So the traditional example is if there's a lamp, then we can cover a glass with a beautiful painting like flowers, rainbows. So if you cover the lamp with this glass with a beautiful image, then what you see, the room will be full of beautiful image. Then we can cover second layers of glass with a scary image. Could be, I don't know, poison snake or Scorpio, ghost. So all this scary image, if you cover that, then what happened? Your room will be full of scary image. But all these three layers comes from the lamp. Without lamp, you cannot have those. So the outer layer is like unhealthy sense of self. Inner layer, healthy sense of self. But the core, the lamp itself is luminous self. Actually, everything is the manifestation of awareness, love and compassion, and the wisdom. So now how to practice that? That's the most difficult part, right? Because it's beyond concept, it transcends. There's no subject and object. There's no concept. But the good news is you can experience. Not only that, at the same time, we have concept. They can be coexist. Beyond concept and the concept can be exist same time. Like sky is beyond cloud, but you can have cloud. And that cloud never change the sky. Yet sky is allowing the cloud, right? So we can have thought, emotion, everything, but then in the end we need to recognize the fundamental quality of our mind, that self-luminosity. Just need to recognize. And how to recognize that? The problem is too easy become difficult, too close cannot see it. So actually it's your own mind. Right now, right here with us, this luminous mind. So then how to practice that? We did the first step already. That open awareness. Just let our mind be as it is. We don't need to look for the awareness. We don't need to get rid of any bad things about the awareness. So no need to do anything. No need to stop thought and emotion. No need to look for peace, calm, and joy. Peace, calm, and joy are the byproduct of meditation, not the essence of meditation. So what is the essence of meditation? Recognizing the knowingness, luminous mind, or consciousness, or awareness. That with us all the time. So don't do anything. So when you let your mind be as it is, you're not lost. Yet, you don't have particular object of meditation. You are being with the luminous mind itself.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. We are going to get a very deep dive into these three methods, these three strategies of remove, transform, and transcend. And we're going to discuss them in light of these 4 21st century kleshas that we've talked about a few times, of distraction, addiction, emotional imbalance, and social division, which is, again, a huge one in our world these days. So we're going to discuss very deeply how we can use each of these strategies and how to actually do this in a very practical way. And that's what we're going to focus on in the coming sessions. Just, one quick comment, because I remember when I first heard about these, it felt like there could be a bit of a contradiction, especially with the first, removing. How does that make sense in light of this view of not needing to fix yourself? That was really confusing to me when I first was learning about this. And as I learned more, learning from Rinpoche and exploring this with Richie through the research we do, I think one way to think about this is, if you imagine any addiction, and actually we'll talk about this a few sessions from now, if you're going to work with an unhealthy behavioral pattern like an addiction, you need to have a very new vision of yourself. You need a shift in perspective, but you also need a very practical way to work with that in your daily life. So for example, say you have a drinking problem with alcohol, and you've been going to a bar around the corner from your house for many years, and you decide that you want to make a change in your life. You need to believe that you have this potential to be in the world and to be anywhere doing anything, and to not succumb to whatever the impulse might be, like to drink or to smoke or whatever it might be. So you need that shift in perspective. You need to see that potential in yourself. You need to envision that new way of living and being in the world, where that's how you are and that's who you are. You need to have that completely new paradigm. At the same time, that's not enough. You need to be practical about what you do next. So the next morning or the next day when you get up, you can't just go to the same bar and hang out with the same friends and assume that that's going to be okay, because at that point, on day one, you're actually probably not ready for that. So you need to have that big, expansive, aspirational view, but in the moment, you need to be practical. You need to say, okay, I want to get there. I know I can get there, but today I need to stay home, or I need to talk to a friend who's going to be supportive of this change I want to make in my life. I know that long term, I want to be able to be there and be okay and not, grab a cigarette or have a drink or whatever it might be. But right now, I need some space. Or right now, I need to just be with the situation differently. So we need that practical perspective, and we need that big aspirational shift. And that's in a little bit of what we're talking about here. So we're going to explore that piece by piece, section by section in the coming weeks. Before we dive into the Q&A, and we've got a little more than 10 minutes for some questions, I just wanted to mention that we really want to write this book and to continue to have this discussion in dialogue with all of you. So we have an email list where we're going to be sending out updates, sending out little clips, and hopefully some guided meditations and excerpts from what we're writing as we continue to work on the book. Most importantly, we want to actually hear your stories. So we're going to ask some questions and put out some emails where we invite you to share your experience. What are the things that you've struggled with, or what are the breakthroughs and insights that you've had in your practice? So we would love if you're interested in this, of course, it's totally optional, but if you're interested in either the updates and or sharing your own insights and stories, we have a link. If we haven't already, I think the team is putting that in the chat. And you can just sign up for this. Of course, you can opt out anytime if it's not something that you're interested in. You can also sign up for updates and insights from the Center for Healthy Minds, which is the research center that Richie founded and where we work together, and also Healthy Minds Innovations. I think many of you joining probably use the Healthy Minds app and might be coming through that gateway. So if you're not already, you can sign up for any newsletter. So feel free to do that if you're interested, of course, totally optional. But now let's end this session on a few questions. There's a lot of really wonderful questions, more than we'll be able to get to. But as I said, hopefully we can cover some of these in the upcoming sessions. But I want to start with one that is just how to deal with situations where these toxic emotions and kleshas can be really strong. So one of our French-speaking listeners wrote, "How can we avoid completely collapsing when adverse emotions are so strong that they prevent us from meditating or even observing them in full awareness?" So maybe Rinpoche, we can start with you. And Richie, I have a feeling you probably have some insights here too. So what do you think?
Yeah, so that might be the removal action might be required. So special what we call from the behavioral level, maybe physical exercise is very important. Or maybe we should check with the therapist, and whatever need to require medication or consultation, also very important. And maybe from the meditation aspect, if you cannot meditate, it's okay. Write down about what we call appreciation about three things, just a little bit. Three things like, today I wash my dishes, wonderful. I have at least have food I can drink, wonderful. I have a roof above my head, wonderful. So that small gratitude, appreciation, if can, might be very good. And also meet with the people, social, kind of like call your friends and discuss something. So there's some little purpose, try to find little purpose, little appreciation. So begin with that one, I think it's really important.
Richie, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, so well, first, the Rinpoche's suggestions are really borne out by modern research and showing that these little practices that you can do anywhere, anytime, like this simple appreciation. I often do it around mealtime, just reflecting on the people that were important in bringing a meal to the table. Just spending a few moments reflecting on that can be very, very helpful. And research shows that it can really reduce stress, it can reduce anxiety, and so forth. The other thing is that we've done some work with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, who've been subjected to a lot of serious trauma. And these are people who often say they can't possibly sit and meditate. And Rinpoche led us through some deep breathing exercises, and that can directly change your autonomic nervous system. It can really directly reduce the amount of arousal that you're experiencing. And sometimes taking a few deep breaths really can be helpful in directly changing our arousal. And so these are all opportunities to use this kind of removal strategy, if you will, where it may not look like classical meditation, but it can really be helpful.
Thank you so much, Richie.
Richie,
Go ahead.
what is the breathing exercise? The normal deep breathing or with the movement?
Well, the movement that you've taught, like with the jumping breaths, has never been studied, but the deep breathing has been studied, and that is really helpful in reducing anxiety and, for example, lowering heart rate, decreasing respiration rate, both of which are really helpful.
So the deep breathing might be make special effort to breathe more deep, like something like that, right?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
So William wrote, if I have understood it correctly, it does not make much sense to look for the worldly reasons for an anxiety disorder, for example, having experienced trauma, but rather to discover the inner qualities and dwell in them. And the more often and the longer I dwell in it, the weaker the anxiety or panic becomes. Is that right?
Yeah, of course, ultimately, but at the beginning, we cannot really totally free like that way. So we need to, what we call, we are in the relative level, we need to rely on the relative. For example, if you're sick, or my true nature is beyond sickness, I will not check with the doctor, not take medication, then big problem, right? Or if you're hungry, oh, the awareness that beyond hunger, no need food, big problem. So the relative level, you need to really take care of the relative level from the behavioral level, but your mind need to free, not stuck your mind with your behave. So what we call behave level, fine, very kind of like serious, but the mind free and not serious. Openness, everything's okay. But your mind said everything's okay, even not okay is okay. But the behavioral level, if you say everything okay, okay, then the big problem, right? So we need to find this balance.
Thanks, Rinpoche. Richie, any thoughts on that one?
No, I think that I think it's all the things that have been said. Yeah.
So I'm looking at all the questions, and I think so many of them are exactly the topics we're going to discuss in the coming weeks. A lot of them are related to emotional imbalance, which is going to be, I think, maybe 3 weeks from now. A lot of them are on attention and distraction, things like that, which we'll talk about next week. And this one we can just get a taste of, very much relates to what will be our second to last session, which is on social division. And this person writes, how do we keep the people in mind and accept them as who they are when we know they have done damage or are doing a large scale damage to the environment or to society? How do we do that? How can I keep being loving and compassionate to these people? What can I do when the feeling of sadness or upset arises during my meditation or when I'm not meditating? So this is obviously a huge one today, given all the upheaval and division in our society.
Normally what we call compassion is for everybody, whether you're close friend or someone you don't like. But it doesn't mean compassion meaning everything's okay. Even you're doing not right, I have to say you're right because I'm compassionate. Not like that. What we call compassion need wisdom. So justice or whatever you think really benefit for everybody is okay. Even Buddha follow justice. But most important is it come out from the not from the hatred, not from the really anger, but it comes from the compassion, comes from the wisdom. So that I think we need to differentiate.
Yeah, and just to add, I'm in the thick of it these days with the current situation in the United States, the threats to funding science, for example, and I can notice in myself the immediate impulse to be angry and to fight, but I quickly am able to shift and recognize that this is coming from deep ignorance. It's really, and from confusion. It's not coming from some malicious intent, I think, to not support this kind of work, although maybe in certain cases it is, but mostly it's really from confusion. And when you recognize that, it actually, compassion naturally follows, because you recognize that, wow, these people are living in a world where they probably are very confused. They're angry themselves. They're suffering, and so we can condemn the acts that they're engaged in, but they're human beings, and they are presumably doing what they're doing because they think that a particular strategy can be helpful. And it may be a terrible strategy from another perspective, but I think when we can adopt that attitude, it can really help us to distinguish between the person and the act that the person is committing, and understand that it may be arising from this state of confusion or delusion, and that can immediately engender a more compassionate response.
Yeah, I mean, I've found the exact same thing. In fact, the points that we're talking about today, the combination of that, the vast view and the shift in perspective, and the practical side of it together, to me, are the key to this. And I've found it really helpful in recent weeks and months. I mean, I'm actually in Portugal right now, but living in the US, there's so much upheaval. I know in many of the countries you all are living in, there's similar things happening. And the world is in such desperate need of a reset, of a different way we can see each other and see the world and still engage the problems that we're all facing, because those are real. Like it's not enough to just ignore the problems. That's obviously not the solution. But we need to change the way we're seeing each other. Like we're in such radical, desperate need to shift all of the habits through which we see each other. So for me, this has been such a helpful reset of just learning to look and see the wholeness of people, even the people I completely disagree with, but there's something in them that is beautiful and wholesome. That doesn't mean I agree with them. That doesn't mean I shouldn't stand up for the things I believe in, but you can still see that wholeness and take action where you need to take action without losing that bigger view. So this is exactly what we're going to explore in the coming sessions. In particular, in about 3 or 4 weeks when we hit the social division one, but we'll take a similar approach to distraction, to emotional imbalance, and to addiction. So just want to thank Richie and Rinpoche for taking your time to share. I'm sure on behalf of everybody, this has been incredibly enriching, and everything that you both have put out into the world, I think, has benefited all of us. And to Dinara, our host, who's going to come on in just a moment, and to a very huge team behind the scenes that has made all of this possible. Also, the team at the Center for Healthy Minds and Healthy Minds Innovations that are our partners here. This is a huge team effort. So, Dinara, I will turn it back to you.
And thank you, Cort. Thank you for your compassionate actions. Yes, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. Thanks for your beautiful questions. And of course, who joined us on YouTube as well, not just Zoom. And that explains that there were so many more listeners in English language that we had on YouTube. And yeah, just another reminder about this mailing list that Court told us about. So now you will see a link again in the chat, and there you can submit a form and sign up for one or all three mailing lists. So one is for the news about Rinpoche, Court, and Ricci and their books. The second one is for the news of Healthy Minds, Center for Healthy Minds, and the third one is for Healthy Minds Innovations NGO news. Yes, so before we end, a very important information about how you can join Tergar, some of the Tergar courses, and how you can learn meditation with Tergar if you feel like. And we have some slides for that. Yes, so if you are interested in meditation, if you're a beginner, or if you just want to deepen your practice of meditation, there is this wonderful step-by-step authentic way designed by Mingyur Rinpoche, Joy of Living. And yes, you can join it. It's actually divided into 3 levels. And there are very great techniques for each one. So level 1 is about awareness, level 2 loving kindness, compassion, level 3 wisdom. So each of them leads us through techniques to deepen these qualities, to recognize deeply each of these qualities. So next slide, please. So yes, this is one of the stories of transformation. And again, as I said, you can join all 3 levels of Joy of Living: awareness, loving kindness, and wisdom. And the next one, please. Yes, what's very important about Tergar and about Joy of Living path is that from the very beginning you will be surrounded by fellow meditators, by a very warm and welcoming community. And there are some activities designed to help you to build the practice of meditation, because sometimes it can be challenging in the beginning when we don't have this habit to meditate every day. So if you are subscribed to Joy of Living course, then you will have the opportunity to do one-on-one meetings with Tergar guides and to discuss your questions and your experience. And also there is this great opportunity to join Joy of Living community circle led by senior Tergar instructor Tim Olsted, where you can find again the very welcoming atmosphere where you can express your concerns and actually share your experiences with other fellow meditators. So these are these live webinars with team. Next one. Yes, and you can start your meditation journey right now, and there will be a link posted in the chat, or you can just see it joy.tergar.org. If you go there, you can start with 10-day free trial of Joy of Living course. Next one. Yes, and this is the invitation to the second event of the series that we started today, the Destruction Epidemic: Unlocking the Power of Awareness, with Ricci, Mingyur Rinpoche, and Court in 1 week. So yeah, I think Court gave a great teaser. So please come and join us again. So thank you very much, and have a good week, and hope to see you in 1 week. Thank you, Mingyur Rinpoche, Richie, Court. Thank you, everyone. And thank you all hosts, translators, and Tergar staff behind the event.
Thank you.